Now, I want to point out something else you need to know. In the very first chapter of the book of Genesis, Moses tells us God created a man who is called Adam. But the biblical text plainly says God did that on the sixth day of creation. Here is what Moses says. Then God said, "Let the waters teem with swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth in the open expanse of the heavens. And God created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarmed after their kind, and every winged bird after its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth. And there was an evening, and there was a morning, a fifth day. Then God said, Let the earth bring forth living creatures after their kind, cattle and creeping things and beasts of the earth after their kind. And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth after their kind, and the cattle after their kind, and everything that creeps on the ground after its kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. And God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them." That passage plainly tells us God created a man on the sixth day of creation. The Hebrew term translated man in that passage is transliterated Adam in other instances. But take note of what the text says. That Adam was created after all the birds, fish, and animals were created on the fifth and sixth days of creation. Remember that. On the sixth day, after all the other creatures had been created, God created a man called Adam in his own image and likeness. Now, if you turn to the second chapter of the book of Genesis, you'll find Moses mentions another man who is also called Adam. But the biblical text just as plainly tells us this Adam was created before God created the animals. Here's what Moses says. Then the Lord God said, It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make him a helper suitable for him. And out of the ground the Lord God formed every beast of the field and every bird of the sky, and brought them to the man to see what he would call them. And whatever the man called the living creature, that was its name. And the man gave names to all the cattle, and to the birds of the sky, and to every beast of the field. But for Adam there was not found a helper suitable for him. Most people think that account and the account in Genesis 1 are both referring to the same Adam. But that's obviously not true, because Moses tells us the Adam described in Genesis 1 was created after the animals, and the Adam described in Genesis 2 was created before the animals. So the two accounts can't be referring to the same Adam. One Adam was created before God created the animals. The other Adam was created after He created the animals. So how are we going to resolve that conundrum? Well, the truth is the two Adams are not the same Adam. The Adam described in Genesis 2, the one who was created before the animals, is quite obviously our forefather, because you can track all of the genealogies in the Bible back to him. But what about the other Adam, the one mentioned in Genesis 1? Who is that other Adam? Well, let me begin by telling you that one of Satan's most pernicious lies will prevent most people from believing what I'm going to tell you now. So if you can see the truth in what I say, you are one of the fortunate few. In contrast to many of his other lies, this particular lie of Satan did not exist anywhere in the church 200 years ago. It's the lie that says the Bible can only be understood literally. That lie was introduced into the church about 180 years ago. Satan is using that lie to conceal the truth about the second Adam, the one mentioned in Genesis 1. You see, the truth is, Genesis 1 is a summary of the entire history of creation. And the account in Genesis 1 is describing Jesus Christ being resurrected in the image and likeness of God on the sixth day of creation. But you have to let go of the lie found in the literal theory of interpretation in order to believe that. Most people won't be able to let go of Satan's lie. If Jesus Christ is the second Adam, the Adam who was created in the image and likeness of God, that means he must have been resurrected on the sixth day of creation, just as Moses says. But Christ was resurrected nearly 2,000 years ago. So the 7 days of creation cannot be literal 24-hour days if Christ is the second Adam. That is, the process of creation must still be going on, and God has not yet rested on the seventh day. That's what Jesus meant when he said he and God were still working instead of resting on the Sabbath. John tells us this, "And a certain man was there who had been 38 years in his sickness. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been a long time in that condition, he said to him, 'Do you wish to get well?' The sick man answered him, 'Sir, I have no man to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up, but while I am coming, another steps down before me.' Jesus said to him, 'Arise, take up your pallet and walk.' And immediately the man became well, and took up his pallet and began to walk. Now it was the Sabbath on that day. Therefore the Jews were saying to him who was cured, 'It's the Sabbath, and it's not permissible for you to carry your pallet.' But he answered them, 'He who made me well was the one who said to me, Take up your pallet and walk.' They asked him, 'Who is the man who said to you, Take up your pallet and walk?' But he who was healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had slipped away while there was a crowd in that place. Afterward Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, 'Behold, you have become well. Do not sin any more, so that nothing worse may befall you.' The man went away and told the Jews that it was Jesus who had made him well. And for this reason the Jews were persecuting Jesus, because he was doing these things on the Sabbath. But he answered them, 'My Father is working until now, and I myself am working.'" In that passage, Jesus is referring to the fact that he was healing people on the Sabbath because God was still working to create him in his own image and likeness. The point is, the real Sabbath, that is, the seventh day of creation, has not yet begun. We are still living in the sixth day of creation, and God is still working to create male and female believers in his own image and likeness. But that's not the only evidence that what I'm telling you is true. The Apostle Paul knew full well that the Adam mentioned in Genesis 1 is Jesus Christ. He also knew God is still working to create male and female believers in his own image and likeness. He talks about it in 1 Corinthians 15, where he describes the nature of the resurrected body. He says this, "But someone will say, 'How are the dead raised, and with what kind of body do they come?' You fool! That which you sow does not come to life unless it dies. And that which you sow, you do not sow the body which is to be, but a bare grain, perhaps of wheat or of something else. But God gives it a body just as he wished, and to each of the seeds a body of its own. All flesh is not the same flesh, but there is one flesh of men, and another flesh of beasts, and another flesh of birds, and another of fish. There are also heavenly bodies and earthly bodies, but the glory of the heavenly is one, and the glory of the earthly is another. There is one glory of the sun, and another glory of the moon, and another glory of the stars. For star differs from star in glory. So also is the resurrection of the dead. It is sown a perishable body, it is raised an imperishable body. It is sown in dishonor, it is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness, it is raised in power. It is sown a natural body, it is raised a spiritual body. If there is a natural body, there is also a spiritual body. So also it is written, the first man, Adam, became a living soul. The last Adam became a life-giving spirit. However, the spiritual is not first, but the natural, then the spiritual. The first man is from the earth, earthy. The second man is from heaven. As is the earthy, so also are those who are earthy. And as is the heavenly, so also are those who are heavenly. And just as we have borne the image of the earthy, we shall also bear the image of the heavenly. In that passage, Paul refers to Christ as the last Adam and the second man because he knows Moses was describing the creation of two completely different Adams in the first and second chapters of Genesis. He also knows that just as true believers have borne the image and likeness of the first Adam, the one who is our forefather, they will also bear the image and likeness of the second Adam, Jesus Christ, the one who was resurrected in the image and likeness of God. But resurrection in the image and likeness of God is only possible if one has first been born again in the image and likeness of God. Only then can he be resurrected in the image and likeness of God at the end of the age. You see, Satan has lied to us by convincing everyone that mankind was created in the image and likeness of God. That's not true. Paul knew it wasn't true, and the early church fathers knew it wasn't true. But Satan has once again distorted the truth, and the leaders of the church have believed him. The truth is, we are still in the middle of the process whereby God is creating male and female believers in His own image and likeness. That's why Satan is fighting so hard to keep everyone believing his lies. In an effort to deceive the whole world in our generation, Satan is using precisely the same tactic that he used on Eve. That is, he is insisting we take the Scriptures literally when he knows the truth quite often resides in idiomatic expressions. The truth is, God has not yet finished the process of creation. We are still living in the sixth day of creation, and you still have an opportunity to participate in God's greatest act of creation, the creation of male and female believers in His own image and likeness. But those who participate in that process can only do so voluntarily, and they can only do so individually. Nobody can force you to believe the truth, and nobody can make the decision for you. You alone must make the decision as to whether or not you want to be born again. That is, only you can decide whether or not you want to be created in the image and likeness of God so that you can rest with Him forever on the seventh day of creation. That is precisely what God is doing through the new birth process. He is creating those who believe the truth in His own image and likeness so that they can rest with Him on the seventh day of creation. The author of the book of Hebrews puts it this way: Therefore, let us fear, lest, while a promise remains of entering His rest, any one of you should seem to have come short of it. For indeed we have had good news preached to us, just as they also. But the word they heard did not profit them, because it was not united by faith in those who heard. For we who have believed enter that rest, just as He has said, As I swore in my wrath, they shall not enter my rest, although His works were finished from the foundation of the world. For He has said thus somewhere concerning the seventh day, And God rested on the seventh day from all His works. And again in this passage, They shall not enter my rest. Since therefore it remains for some to enter it, and those who formerly had good news preached to them failed to enter because of disobedience, He again fixes a certain day, today, saying through David after so long a time, just as has been said before, Today, if you hear His voice, do not harden your hearts. For if Joshua had given them rest, he would not have spoken of another day after that. There remains, therefore, a Sabbath rest for the people of God.